Chers collègues, mesdames, messieurs, d'abord, je dois remercier nos partenaires, Paris sur place et la Caisse des dépôts, et toutes les autres organisations pour la coopération profonde et excellente dans la préparation de cette journée. Aussi, je dois dire que c'est vraiment un grand privilège d'avoir l'opportunité de vous adresser sur ce sujet. C'était crucial pour nous et le monde entier. Et je suis désolé, mais à ce moment actuel, je dois continuer dans ma langue maternelle. As Chris said, I speak on behalf of the European Investment Bank, which is owned directly by the 28 EU member states and is the world's largest multilateral financier by volume. In 2014, we provided €77 billion for investment in nearly 500 projects. Around 10% of that lending each year is outside the European Union. We're the world's largest financier of climate-related investment and renewable energy. But what I want to do is I want to seize the opportunity today to invite everyone to join us in meeting this climate finance challenge, because climate risks, of course, are real. They undermine the efforts we are making to improve welfare, notably in the world's poorest regions, and they threaten economic growth across the globe. So the decisions taken in the next 7 months will shape future climate and development actions for decades to come. Both the Sustainable Development Goals and the new Global Climate Agreement will depend heavily on the ability to mobilize finance at scale. How much? The scale of finance needed for a low-carbon and climate-resilient planet lies in the trillions, as indeed the title of today's conference suggests. At the spring meetings in Washington, we heard numbers suggesting that we need anyway by 2030, and I underline the word anyway there, and I'll say why in a moment. We need anyway to undertake global investment of $89 trillion in infrastructure, energy, land use systems, and urban development. And more trillions are needed to permanently transition to a low-carbon economic future. So these numbers are challenging, but note particularly that the bulk of them will need to be found anyway. We need to renew our roads, we need to renew our transport, we need to renew our housing, we need to renew all those things. So the trick, if you like, is to do the investment, which we need to do anyway, but to do it smartly. And that's why, as the title of this conference implies, it's a question of shifting the billions, which is a challenging but much more easily achievable target than finding the billions. The report of the Standing Committee on Finance at the Conference of the Parties estimates that climate finance flows from developed to developing countries range from $40 billion to $175 billion a year. Public institutions, such as the EIB, play a critical role in channeling between $35 billion and $50 billion a year for climate finance, as well as reducing climate risks in developing countries. So these are large numbers, but they still fall well short of what is needed. The international community agreed in 2009 to mobilize additional $100 billion a year by 2020, and remember that this is an annual number, for climate mitigation and adaptation measures in developing countries. This funding will be delivered through various channels. One of these new channels is the Green Climate Fund, which has received over $10 billion in pledges so far. But in order to tackle the finance challenge, public finance is plainly insufficient, so we need to find ways to encourage and maintain private sector flows. Public financial institutions have a key catalytic role in providing products and structures to allow private investors and other financiers to invest their money for climate-friendly projects. But we need to have a clear, agreed idea of what we are doing. That's why, in order to gain a better understanding of how much climate finance is spent where and on what, the MDBs and national development financing institutions have been working closely together in order to develop a harmonized methodology for tracking climate finance flows. And as Chris said, this March in Paris here, the development finance community made a key step towards this when a total of some 24 development banks, including the MDBs and national development banks, such as KfW and the AfD, agreed on common principles for climate mitigation finance tracking. This community also agreed on common principles to track contributions from others through financial leverage for climate action, and we agreed to consistently build in climate considerations, so-called mainstreaming of climate change, into all the projects which we finance. But more work is needed to agree on a common set of guidelines to track adaptation finance, and we're working on this with a view to presenting results well ahead of the Paris conference in December. Mobilizing more finance for adaptation measures is a major challenge for both the public and private sectors. Very often, there is no immediate visible financial return other than avoided cost of damage. Finance for adaptation is also, by definition, linked to risks which, although plainly real, are difficult to assess with the sort of precision which is sometimes necessary for financial intervention. But at the same time, of course, stepping up adaptation measures is absolutely crucial, in particular for the least developed countries and small island states, as development efforts are too often being undermined through severe weather events. We'll discuss shortly in the panel the main challenges to finding a solution on how to scale up climate finance. But can I just, by way of illustration, just take the opportunity to outline some of the areas where institutions such as mine can make our contribution. As I said before, the EIB is one of the world's largest sources of finance for climate action. So one thing we can do is target our own funding in a way which helps to achieve our common goals. We were a pioneer in the green bond market, issuing successful products that allow capital market investors, such as pension funds and insurance companies, to indirectly engage with low-carbon projects. The bank is, in fact, the largest issuer of green bonds to date, with €9 billion raised in 10 different currencies. We've also developed, with several other MDBs, a harmonized framework for green bond impact reporting, and we've used these for the project allocations from our climate awareness bonds in 2014. Our practice is aligned with the green bond principles, which set out voluntary process guidelines that recommend transparency and disclosure in the green bond market. We intend to take this important work forward by engaging with other issuers, working towards a joint approach to reporting on the expected impact of projects associated with green bonds. We're also working to develop smaller, innovative climate finance products and advisory services to pull in private investors. These products support projects which are economically viable but do not receive sufficient funding from market sources because of particular risk barriers and market failures. So just by way of illustration, one example of this is the Global Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Fund, or GREF. Sorry, there's acronyms all over the place with this. GREF is a fund of funds which the EIB set up with the support of the EU, Germany and Norway. This provides equity capital to unlock private investments in renewable energy and energy efficiency projects in developing countries. Building on the experience from these kind of products and passing on this knowledge to scale up finance is key to the success of common endeavours, such as the GCF. We need also to set ourselves stretching targets in terms of our own lending. The EIB was the first multilateral development bank to set an annual target of 25% of its total lending for significant action in climate, a target which we've achieved for 6 consecutive years, which means concretely, since 2009, €20.8 billion in projects in areas of water and wastewater services and other water resources, including flood protection, 14 billion on projects in wind energy manufacturing and solar power, and around 11 billion for energy efficiency measures and a large number of energy efficiency funds. These projects, which we've supported since 2009, have saved approximately 15 million tonnes of carbon dioxide per year, which exceeds the emission of 6 million cars. But we need to go further than this. One thing which we need to do, of course, is to develop and concentrate our support on smart and sustainable cities, because although cities cover less than 2% of the Earth's surface, they consume 78% of the world's energy and produce more than 60% of all carbon dioxide, and more than 3/4 of the world's population live in cities. So it is self-evident that the fight against climate change will be largely determined in urban areas. So examples of areas for finance here are financing for sustainable transport, social and digital infrastructure, improved waste treatment plants, energy efficiency, and urban regeneration. 2 other points. First, we've sought to integrate climate action considerations effectively into all our activities and practices, and by mainstreaming climate action in this way throughout the whole investment cycle, we can help to ensure that all countries and all sectors can benefit from the financial and technological innovation that is associated with climate finance. Second, we prioritise support to projects with an energy efficiency dimension, and we have set formal lending criteria that screen power generation projects on the basis of their carbon dioxide emissions. This effectively closes the door on our financing unabated coal power plants. In order to guide our work in the years ahead, the EIB has recently concluded a public consultation on its approach to climate action, and we will integrate the views of external stakeholders in our future strategic orientations to be presented at the Paris conference in December. Without anticipating any results of this consultation, it's clear that we must and will address adaptation to climate change as well as mitigation, and we can certainly further improve delivery across all of our services, including lending, blending of funds, and our advisory services. But the key remains the need to bring private investors on board, for without them, the global community will not be able to meet the challenge that we face. Ladies and gentlemen, climate change is a global risk not only to our economies, but to our societies themselves. That's why success in adopting sustainable development goals and an agreement on a new climate approach by as many different states and stakeholders as possible are absolutely crucial. But to deliver those agreements will require the mobilization of financial flows on a huge scale. That can only be done by public and private sectors working together. I can assure you that we are already committed, actively committed to this objective, with successful models, big and small, in a range of climate-related sectors. But we will need to do more to meet the challenging but achievable objectives of shifting the trillions. And I look forward to working with you all in making this a reality. Thank you very much. And now back to you, Chris.